In this episode of the podcast, we talk about application length and how to stand out in subtle ways at open casting calls. Welcome to the How to Get on Reality TV podcast with Dan Giesling, where I answer your reality TV casting questions once a week. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the How to Get on Reality TV podcast. I'm Dan Giesling. I'm excited as always to be here today because we have a great two-part question from a listener north of the border. And before we get into that, I want to wish everyone, I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving and a safe Black Friday. Hopefully you kept out of the madness. But also want to let you guys know about the email list. And I haven't talked about it in a while, but every week, I send an email out on Tuesday with a link to the podcast, and in that email, there's also one tip that takes the podcast answer that I give. It takes it one step further. It's a small thank you for people that sign up for the email list. So for this, example on this question, we talk about application length and how to stand out subtly at open casting calls. There's going to be an additional tip you can only find on the email list. You can join the email list by going to howtogetonrealitytv.net/list. It's really easy. I don't send any spam. Just one email a week. Usually it's Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever, after the podcast is released, just a reminder to go check out the podcast with the additional tips. So you can check that out by going to howtogetonrealitytv.net/list and sign up there. It's completely free to sign up. And so without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this week's question, which is a great two-parter.
Hey Dan, Joey Batts here from Toronto. I have a two-part question from my casting experience so far in Big Brother Canada, and I think it'll be helpful for those future hopefuls. My first question is in regards to the written application. These questions don't have a recommended word count for the responses. I didn't want to miss any of the details of my application, so my answers ended up being very long, and I had concern now that those long responses scared off the readers. What are your thoughts on this matter? Is there recommended word counts for the responses? Should it be point form? Interested to hear your thoughts. My second question is actually from my sister-in-law who applied for Big Brother Canada as well, and I've recently got into the podcast. I know you are super against open casting calls, but given that you only have a few minutes to talk in these open casting calls, how does someone who is quiet or shy get casted via these calls, such as Sarah, the Big Brother Canada winner from last season, especially when you could have someone like Jordan in your group that will sabotage your audition and steal the spotlight? Interested to hear your thoughts. Thanks.
Hey, Joe, first and foremost, thanks for the kind words, and thanks for listening to the show, and also thanks for taking the time to submit your question on the podcast. You have a two-parter, which is good. You get a little in-depth, which is even better. But let's go ahead and dive right in. So you took the application, and the application is something that we've talked about in previous podcast episodes, but I don't think we've gotten this particular question in terms of length of response on the application, because generally what you want to do with the application is you really, though, in the order of doing things, the application is the absolute last thing you do. The first thing being create your story, understand your character, then shoot your video, and then finally do the application. And of course, that's a general overview. So that way, by the time you get to the application, it's a really easy process because you're just pulling out essentially what you've already have shown them who you are through your audition video, and also understand who you are through your story development, which should come way before you even get to the application. But your question specifically is, hey, how long should it be? And then does that affect, because Joe, your responses were super long from what it sounds like, did that affect your ability to get cast in the show? And more often than not, it's probably not going to have an adverse effect. What's going to hurt you is if you put very little or nothing. Now, it's a fine balance, because you have to remember that the people, the assistants that look at the applications, they're probably not going to read word for word someone who's writing 2 pages per question. Yeah, now that may be a little bit of an exaggeration, but you want to keep things succinct, but you also want to make sure you get out everything you need to say. So, is there a finite, perfect response or response length? Not necessarily. Do you want to put it in bullet format? No, you want to write it out in a coherent paragraph or paragraphs. What I would do, being in the shoes of a casting person, I think 2 paragraphs is plenty. Maybe you get it done in 1 paragraph, but you want to be able to intelligently explain who you are in your response to that question in a succinct manner, because I think as you get going, if you get run on, that may be an indication of, not understanding the process, or maybe that's how your personality is. So I don't know. I don't think you need to spend hours and hours and hours upon the application. The application should be relatively quick and easy based on doing your homework ahead of time. So I don't have a recommended length. I would say I'd be surprised if anyone had more than 2 paragraphs or, 12 to 14 sentences. Any more than that, I would think would be overkill, in my opinion. But the second question you said is not for you. It's for, I believe you said a family member or sister-in-law. You said, you guys are well aware that I don't like open casting calls, okay? You guys understand why. There's a lot of pressure. It's the best dancing circus animal wins. But you had a really intelligent question. You said, hey, how can you stand out for someone that's more introverted or shy? And it really stems from the principle that not always the loudest person garners the most attention. So what I mean by that is there's things you can do to draw attention to yourself from a casting director, because that's what you want to do. The person that draws the most attention is going to get the most attention and probably get the nod to move on to the next round. So the first thing you have to do going into this open casting call, which I don't recommend, is you need to have a strong sense of your story and who you are and how you want to portray yourself, because you can portray yourself as someone who's confident, but you don't have to be over the top loud and obnoxious like people probably often are at these open casting calls. You can get a lot done with facial expressions. So although you may not agree with someone in your group what they're saying, you can make a facial expression that may even cause a casting associate to ask you, well, we can see on your face clearly you don't agree with X, Y, or Z. So use facial expressions even in an exaggerated manner, because that can garner more attention than someone who's just yelling at the top of their lungs, calling people out. The third thing you can do is you can use physical energy, like your presence, your posture, how you position yourself, how you either you can look at someone and know if they're confident, if they're in agreement with what's being said. Use your body language to your advantage. And just remember, the loudest person doesn't always win. You can communicate. There's a lot of different ways to communicate. You can communicate with your facial expression and your energy and your posture. And those are all things you can do to help draw attention to yourself in an open casting call situation. So, Joe, I hope this helps you, and I believe your sister-in-law with the questions and casting. Best of luck with everything. Thank you so much, Joe. As a small thank you for you taking the time to submit your question to the podcast, we're going to send you a free digital copy of my story, How a Normal Guy Got Cast on Reality TV. And if you, the listener at home, wants, or in the car or running, want your question answered on the podcast, you can go to howtogetonrealitytv.net/ask, and you can do it from your phone, you can do it from your tablet, you can do it from your computer. It's really straightforward. Get as detailed as you can in the question. That way I can help you on an individual basis while helping everyone else that is listening to the podcast as well. So, Joe, thank you so much. And to everyone else, I hope this information helped you guys answer the questions about application and how to stand out a little bit different in an open casting call. All right, so this wraps up another episode of the How to Get on Reality TV podcast. Hope you guys that are involved in the process or thinking about getting involved in the process are enjoying yourself. That's one important thing to remember, that getting cast on reality TV and going through the experience is supposed to be fun. So one of the things you can do is just take a little pressure off yourself, have some fun, and look at your story from a different perspective. And speaking of perspective, if you guys want an additional perspective on the question on this, we answer on this podcast about open casting calls in the application, be sure to sign up for the email list at howtogetonrealitytv.net/list, because in this list, I always include an extra tip to take the podcast answer one step further. So you can sign up for the email list. It's completely free. Go to howtogetonrealitytv.net/list. You can sign up there. It's really straightforward. And like I said, you get an extra tip that you won't hear on the podcast format. So that being said, thank you guys so much for listening. Hope you guys are continuing to enjoy the podcast. You guys are always sending in great questions. Continue to send in more. And I wish you guys best of luck on your casting journey. And I'll see you guys next Monday.